Hello, ski racing fans, and welcome to the American Downhillers podcast season 2. This is our second season of sharing the world of speed with you. I'm Doug Lewis, and together with Alpine champ, world champ bronze medalist AJ Kick, Hahnenkamm winner Darren Ralves, and Chamonix DH champion Marco Sullivan. Our goal is to share with you the stories, facts, legends, and inside lines of World Cup downhill. And for our kickoff show, covering the opening men's downhill in Lake Louise in Canada, November 25, 26, 27, we have four-time Olympian, two-time Canadian national champion, and owner of 3 World Cup podiums, Crazy Canuck Brian Stemmle.
Yeah, listen
Hey,
to
Stem, where are you,
incredible.
and how psyched are you for the start of the speed season?
Oh, it's always fun talking ski racing and getting back into the swing of things after a few cancellations. We'll be ready to go in Lake Louise, and yeah, I can't wait.
That's all right. You, AJ, and I raced at the same time, and at that time, the Crazy Canucks defined the downhill event. You came in, I think, at the end of that era, but describe what it was like to be a part of that team. Reed, Murray, Podborski, Urin, Brooker, Stemmle. What was it like?
Yeah, I was right at the tail end. So Steve Podborski's last race in 1984 was my first race, my World Cup race, and I was scared as scared can be standing in that starting gate. But it was a real thrill to know those guys and race them and call them friends. And I remember I grew up in the East in Ontario, so I'm in Toronto now. I just grew up in Aurora and skied in Collingwood. And I remember going to see a movie called The Dream Never Dies, and it was about the Crazy Canucks. And my friend Chaz Burkett reminds me all the time that when I walked out of that movie when I was 10 or 12 years old, that I told him I wanted to be one of those guys one day. So I turned out to be, and it was a big thrill to get to know them and meet them and race a little with them.
AJ, your thoughts on, at the tail end of that era as well?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, the thing that I think all of us remember, and I was in high school when it happened, but Brooker just tumbling down the Zielschluss at Kitzbühel, no one will ever forget that. And if you wanted to be a downhiller and saw that, you probably thought twice about it. But I do remember, like, probably the most thrilling thing for me was I was at a charity event in Vail, and I happened to be in a gondola, and Brooker was in there, and Podborski was in there, and Phil Mayer was in there. I think Cindy Nelson was in there. We were just all riding up the thing, and I just felt like I was 12 years old again, watching my ski racing heroes. And there I was in this gondola with them, just trying to figure out how I got there. But they were all really awesome guys. And as the years went on, and I started racing with you, Lou, and they were hanging around, always so nice. And it was, they were like neighbors, just like we are, Canada and U.S. neighbors, and we're racing together growing up in NORAMs and things like that across the border. It just felt really familiar to really get to know those guys. So it was a lot of fun to be inspired by them too.
Yeah, I thought, for me, and this is a little bit of an error. By the way, I was not in the starting gate, but I was at the start when Brooker did the whole thing. So that was a good 45-minute helicopter ride, as we've all done, waiting at the start of Kitzbühel. But luckily, I did not see it until I went on my run. But growing up, the Canadians, the Americans, because I guess we spoke English, we were tight, we were together. I remember celebrating Rob Boyd's victories at Val Gardena, because a victory for the Canadian team was a victory for the American team. We were super tight. And did it continue to be that way? Is it that way right now? What are your thoughts out there for that Canadian-American teamwork?
I always love the Americans. You guys are always good fun and like to have a good time and ski too and race. And I remember watching Darren and seeing him one race morning and going, man, that guy's eyes, like he wants to win way more than I do right now, because I can see it in his eyes. I'm like, I'm not that motivated. Like, come on, is this guy a competitor or what? So we were always great friends, and it was always fun to hang out with everybody, even though I hated when AJ beat me for some reason. I don't know what that was about it, but he got a couple races snagged away from him that he should have won. So I was cheering for him on those days. But generally, great friends, great playing hockey together and playing any kind of sport together, especially skiing was awesome.
Yeah, Lou, Stemmle, like your crew of like Podovinsky, Thorburn, Kerry Mullen, Luke Souter, like those are the guys that I had a blast, your teammates hanging out with. I was on Rossi at the time. and the protege underneath AJ here. And we had this ski tech, Eddie Wahlberger, and he was also teching for Podovinsky. So, it got to be really, I guess, in a way, friends, but just, somebody kind of really look as someone that's setting the bar, right? And he was winning. He was on the podium. But I think the best story I have from the Canadians was coming back from Nagano. It was a year before the Olympics, at a test event, and Pod was on the podium, and he had like just gallons of sake that they gave him. And we had the train ride from Nagano back to Tokyo.
I remember that train
I was
ride.
on that train.
God, man. Just, I mean, it was so loose and on fire, and just no one throws down like the Canadians, man. You guys still we're upholding that crazy Canuck name to the highest standards.
I remember the Swiss
Didier,
guys were at the front of that train car, and they were so pissed off at how loud we were.
except Didier
so
Couch
good.
was with us, because I remember he dressed up in ski gear and skied straight down the aisle of the train.
Yeah, that's right.
His gear where they're pushing him from behind. It was complete comedy.
But that just I think what Louis is touching on, we definitely had a great relationship there in that era, and later in my career wasn't as strong, but when I first made it, I was first trying to just do what I could to try and catch up to everybody and get in the mix. It was so much fun training with you guys and hanging out and just causing havoc around the world.
For my part, my career kind of went right on the heels of you, Stem. When I remember you're running Nagano, watching that and being super impressed and looking up who is this guy? And then I made the U.S. team the next year. But our relationship with the Canadians always continued for sure. And some of my best memories were at Christmas time in Bormio. It was always us and the Canadians were there, just kind of homeless for Christmas. We'd have a big hockey game and we would just get crushed by you guys, but it was always good fun.
Yeah, those are some of my greatest memories in Bormio, going out Christmas Eve or whatever the night before and having some laughs together, sharing some camaraderie when our families aren't around at Christmas. It was nice to have Americans and Canadians as a big family.
Yeah, but I figured the hard way, we sucked. Americans sucked on ice. You guys kicked ass. But I would get so just sucked into that game, trying so hard. And 2 days later, I could hardly even move, right? I'm going to Bormio for first training run, just whooped. I had no legs. I was just jello legs. So I had to step away and not play hockey anymore my last couple of years just to save it. But I think my biggest connection with the Canadian team was actually our coach, Pete Bozinger. Bozo, just he meant a lot to our team. He brought a lot to the table. He was a big reason for my Lauberhorn win. He came in, woke me up. He's like, "Hey, D, I got to show you one more thing from Mitch Conte. In this one section, I just found this is the line you need to take tomorrow for race day." And we went over it another half hour, that night before I went to sleep. And I nailed it that day. And that was a big part of skiing fast that for that race day. But
He never gave me those kind of tips.
well,
He's the greatest though. Yeah.
he was awesome. Just so the Canadians have definitely influenced us a lot as Americans. Been great friends, good times on the road. But on the coaching side as well, having Bozo there, he helped tremendously for our team.
Right now, I don't want to stir any controversy, but the Americans more aligned with the Norwegians. Are the Canadians training with a team more often than not to, share responsibilities and work with each other, Stem?
Yeah, a little bit. You have to gauge yourself against the others while you're training down in South America, like they were in Portillo with the Austrians. And, the Canadians have such a strong team now, they don't really need anybody else, it almost seems like, because they're all pushing each other. They're all great friends. They grew up skiing together. Most of them from Whistler, at least skied there. And a good bunch of guys who are just on the way up. If you didn't notice that last year, you're missing something.
Doug Lewis here. If you are a U12, U14, or U16, Elite Team fitness camps are for you. This is not your average fitness camp, as we teach the vital skills of sports psychology and sports nutrition, along with tough, challenging workouts. You will leave camp with more power, strength, and agility, with a deeper understanding about nutrition, and with the mental skills of confidence, focus, and pushing limits, which will take you to the next level. Over our 30 years, we have coached Olympic champions, World Cup stars, NCAA champions, including U.S. ski teamers Michaela Schifrin, Lauren Masuga, Alice Merriweather, Jimmy Krupka, Grace Henderson, and Sammy Worthington. And finally, although we push our limits to the edge, we have a ton of fun. We are holding 2 week-long sessions this July at the Killington Mountain School. Find all the info at eliteteam.com. Now, from the team relationship on World Cup downhill throughout our careers to the personal relationship, I can say for certain we love to hate the Austrians. I mean, Klammer and Stock and Wernsberger are some of my best friends now, but boy, we love to hate them. And maybe it's because of Bill Johnson. I was at that table when Klammer called him a nose picker and Johnson went up and they were face to face and it was almost blows. And I was freaked out because I was just this young kid seeing Johnson stand up face to face with Klammer. So we love to hate the Austrians, even though we kind of like them. But I had my buddies that were the Europeans. Pierman Zurbriggen, still a friend to this day. And I met him on the podium at Bormio. Mook Meyer, I was the fastest guy on down in Rossi for a while, and he was in Europe. He's about 1.5 feet and 200 pounds heavier than I am, but we were together because of Rossi. So I still have that good relationship. And Luc Alphon from France. So Zurbriggen, Meyer, Alphon, still good friends to the day. And share about some of your best friends still today, who we hated in the starting gate, but we hugged and loved outside of the course.
I think all 3 of those guys were everybody's friends. They're just such great guys. Especially Luke. Luke loved playing hockey with us all the time. He would buy skates or have us buy skates and bring them over for him because he couldn't get any decent skates in France. So he was always everybody's good buddy, and Mook's awesome. But I was used to congregating around the guys who started around me, depending on where I was ranked in the world. The guys who start 2 or 3 in front of you, 2 or 3 behind you, you kind of grab a closer connection with because you spend more time with them. But one of the guys for me was Armin Assinger. And after I fell in Kitzbühel in 1989, I was in the hospital there for 2.5 weeks in intensive care. And some of the Americans came to visit me, and even though they wouldn't allow many people in, they got a chance to do that. So that was really kind of them. But Armin Assinger fell in Wengen the week after and broke both his legs. And a lot like Max Franz, landed off a jump and, had compound fractures of his tibs and fibs. And he was in the same hospital in Innsbruck. And thankfully, they saved my life. They put him back together. He went on to ski race again. So did I. But we had a great connection there because he came to visit me one day in the hospital. I knew he was there. Because people had told me, but I was pretty out of it. I was in a drug-induced coma for 5 days. But after I recovered from that, Armin walked down with 2 crutches in his 2 casts and walked down and spent some time with me. So he did that for a few days. He couldn't make it back up because it was so tiring for him. But we used to write letters back and forth to each other to see how each other were doing, taking care of each other and looking after each other. And still to this day, we keep in touch, and he's a good friend.
Great story.
The hospital connection's an interesting one. I remember waking up after my ACL surgery at the Stemmle clinic in Vail, and Stock and Wernsberger were there in my room, who had been long since retired when this all happened to me, but they were in Vail for the American Ski Classic. And those guys came to visit me. We raced together a little bit. They were older, but I shared a podium with Stock at my first victory in Val d'Isère. I actually beat him out for that win. And but those guys became good buddies, and it was heartwarming to me that they came to visit. Guys like you said, Lou, that were easy for us to really not like because they always beat us, and they had the sort of that mechanical way of just going about being so strong. But they got it as downhillers. They knew what it was like to get hurt and try to get back. So it was fun for me to get to know them on that level as well.
So for me, it was Hans Knaus, Austrian. I remember riding the chair with him. He was like the first Austrian World Cup skier I ever rode the chair with, and he would actually talk to me. So my first year on World Cup, and we got to be pretty good friends. And as Americans, it's tough. We're over there in Europe for a long time. We typically, spend Christmas over there. and I really had nothing going on for Christmas, and besides being with some of the guys on the team, but I wanted to change, and Hans reached out after we raced Kranjska GS, and he's like, "Hey, come stay at my house." So I went to his place for like 3 days and in Schladming, and got to know his family, and it's just to this day, I see him in Kitzbühel or Wengen. He's still doing the ORF commentating. He's taking those runs down the mountain with the POV, but we go on the hill and stuck together, and same in Beaver Creek. It's been a long time, like great friendship. We just keep it going, and now my kids are friends with his, so
No,
it's
cool.
fun to see the next generation. It's
Great.
easy. It's not like Stemmle had to write letters to Armin Alsinger. Now it's just FaceTiming and Instagram and all that. So it opens
was
up
a
the
while
world of
ago.
communication so much easier these days, and it's fun to see how just being so separated on the other sides of the world, at any time you can get in touch with somebody and say hi.
I definitely echo what all you guys are saying. It's a brotherhood out there, and we're all kind of throwing it down every weekend and doing, similar things and similar injuries, and it just becomes tight out there, and certain guys stand out among the pack, but it's always great camaraderie, and looking back now that we're all done racing, certainly some of the highlights I think are the things you can look back on, and the guys you shared that bond with, and it still goes to this day for sure.
This week, we are proud to welcome the ADL Ski Club as a new supporter to this season's podcast. The ADL has members all over the country and are huge fans of the World Cup and big supporters of the American Downhillers. Their dream trips go to Kitzbühel, Wengen, the Dolomites, and Japan for Japao. But this month, they are supporting the American Downhillers with an online auction to help raise money for the men's speed team coaches mentorship fund, and they need your help. The aim of the fund is to bring back experienced coaches and athletes to pass along their valuable insight, experience, and support to the new generation of coaches. This year's funds go to get Forrest Carey, Dane Spencer, and our own Marco Sullivan back coaching our best. For all information on supporting this fund, go to adlskiclub.com/fundraiser. That's adlskiclub.com/fundraiser. You can bet on all kinds of great US ski team gear with race suits available from Steven Nyman, Jared Goldberg, and Tommy Ford, as well as official US ski team clothing. All items are 100% tax deductible and will go exclusively to the fund. The ADL and Coach Scotty Venus, thank you for your support.
So how about we switch it up, and Marcos, you start off, but was there any one guy that was a rival to you that you just kind of just banged heads with every time you saw?
There was, we used to, Klaus Kroll used to be my nemesis. Klaus and I were the same age, 1980 birth year, and he won World Juniors downhill a couple times, I think, and he ended up racing. I think when I retired, I had the most downhill races for an American, but he, I think, might have the most downhills of all time. He just raced, he won the overall title once, or downhill title. And I'd say for the most part of his career, he was a lot better than I was, but we always I always looked for him on the start list, and we started with each other for a long time. And actually just saw him in Saas-Fee a couple weeks ago, and he was coaching, or a couple months ago, he was coaching a crew. And I was there with a little American Downhiller crew, and like we said, the bond goes on. We're talking about all the old stories.
Stemmle, you're up.
I didn't really have a hate on for anybody. No, I was nice.
I'll take this one, Stemmle and AJ. We all hated Peter Mueller.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, when we're at Kitzbühel, at the Londoner, there was always a special champagne bottle that I saved so I could spray it in his face as close as possible and just blind him for an entire year.
I think, for me, I don't know that I had any rivalries, but I had the bad fortune for my career to land right when Heinzer just had his stretch of 4 years in a row, and I could just never beat that guy. I mean, I did beat him once in a while, but he was so consistent. And, I would say that, my best years in like 91, 92, 93, I just I couldn't solve that guy, for the most part. I'd have a few good races, but then I'd always have a couple of bad ones that would bounce me back into points. And then, towards the end of my career, Alphon, he went, I think 4 years in a row winning the downhill title and won the overall once or twice. And same thing, like I was coming back after my injury and starting to, find some form, but as a guy, I just couldn't get around. Yeah, so maybe without those two guys, I might have, had a better shot at the downhill title. But and then, Patrick Ortley, is another guy. Just a couple of years there, so solid, and he was another easy guy to develop a rivalry with because he didn't give you much on inspection or whatever. You'd want to get friendly with him, ride the lift with him, talk to him, and he wouldn't give you a smile, man. You couldn't crack him. He'd just go out there and work you over, and it wasn't pretty to watch, but boy, he was fast.
What's up with those Austrians, man? I mean, I was ruled by Herman Meyer, just say, "Hey, Herman," and never even get my, my name repeated, or never just look away. This guy was just, in a way, pretty disrespectful. Shake his hand when you'd be up on the podium. If I beat him, he would just look away when he put his hand out. Just that kind of stuff. Always try to get in my head. And Kitzbühel, I was on the podium when he won. And then the next year I was inspecting, and I basically probably felt like I was a contender, and I might've been a threat. So he comes down, I have my head down going over this section below the Mausefale, and just crushes me with a wake of snow. It's like in my face, goggles, down my jacket. I was like, what was up with that? He's like, bah, didn't see you. Like, yeah, right. So, I wasn't one to start stuff, but I didn't want to just back down. So let him get all the way down by below Style Hong. He's on the road. John was like, get going. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm waiting for Herman to get down there a little ways. We got a little payback to give him. So, just, I think after that, that time where I sprayed him back and he was just like shaking his head, kind of pissed off. And I'm like, at that point, I felt like he just felt that mutual respect in a way. And he didn't really screw with me after that. So you gotta step up to those bullies. He was definitely a bully on the tour, and he dominated hard. And it was just, one is skiing ability, but the intimidation factor.
All right, Stem, we're going to move over to Lake Louise. I looked up your history along with mine, and you only raced Lake Louise that one year in 1991. I think it was in March. What does the downhill race at Lake Louise mean to you personally, and then maybe, for the Canadians?
That one meant a lot to me because Dave Murray, Crazy Canuck, just died of cancer. So he was 39, I believe, really young, and young daughter, Julia, who went on to be a great ski cross racer. So we paid tribute to him with wearing a black armband around our arm. And we'd gone to untraditional green for our suits that year for some odd reason. And for that last race, we were going to wear our yellow suits, but then the coaches and Alpine Canada got wind of it because they didn't want us to wear the green ones because of the new sponsors on it. They didn't want us to wear the old ones with the old sponsors on it. So we wore the old ones anyway, the yellow ones, to pay tribute to them, put the armband around the sponsors. Off we went. So it's always a real memorable place. And I did a little homework too, Lou, and this is a reason why it's one of my favorite places. Just hang on a second. It's going to come in there because I tried this earlier.
Little up high. There it is.
So that's me, Lake Louise.
Woo!
And that's Sunset Jump. And just one of the most beautiful places. Malcolm Carmichael, a great photographer from Banff, took that. So I have that up in my our family cottage. And then this one also. Whoops, no, wrong way. That one was Darren Thorburn. You mentioned him earlier.
I remember.
That's Sunset Jump. So we were training there, and we were going from the top, and we were all wearing our jackets because we were so cold and scared to go off this jump. And Thor said, screw it, and took off his jacket. And Malcolm got that shot as well as he went like massive 150 yards or something, like way, way up there. One of the best shots ever. And then I found this beauty.
You found that?
AJ.
Look at this. AJ Kit doing a Daffy.
Oh boy.
How's that?
Is that
Lake Louise too, buddy, or what?
Did you win that, AJ?
That was on the cover of the newspaper when I first saw it. Somebody, it was a training run. I blew out and was mad, so I threw a daffy off the jump.
So Lake Louise is memorable for lots of
Yeah.
reasons, and yeah, it's going to be another great one up there. It's always freezing cold, but it's good just to get some wind in your face there. I never really liked the downhill. It doesn't really have much flow. It's kind of go fast and jam on the brakes and some ice and go fast again. It wasn't really my kind of style, although I did love the jumps. But yeah, it's always fun to race there. That's for sure. Great memories there. Staying at the chateau, which is like a castle, right? It's like your Cinderella.
Yeah.
This is going to be the last Lake Louise, right?
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. I'm sure they would, love to have it there every year because it's so consistent, hardly ever canceled except for last year. And just guaranteed snow and cold there. But tech races are big, man. You watch Killington and the people show up for that. We have a great women's technical team now. So I'm sure they're going to show up in Mount Tremblant as well and put on a good show there. The Eastern fans deserve it. They got, Eric Gay's the winningest skier ever in Canada, and nobody knows of him. They still think Steve Poborski or Nancy Green are the greatest. And Eric Gay, right from Mount Tremblant, right there, who had a lot to do with bringing a race to his home club, is well deserved because he's one of the greatest or the greatest Canadian racer ever.
I know these guys talk about racing in Beaver Creek. How the energy is just there and they're psyched to be proud and do well on their home turf, but also a little extra nerves. What is that like for Canada, the Canadian team being at Lake Louise? Is there extra pressure or is it the energy that they feel?
It's just time consuming. It's your time that you have to really manage well because there's so many more things to do rather than just watch video and play hockey and then go back up for your training run or your race and look at your split times. Media, family, everything else, interviews on top of it. So it's just time consuming. You don't really have a great routine when you get to your home races because there's a lot of demand. But they've done it before and they know what's up. They have a chance to race at home for some of them. Jeff Reed, Ken's kid, so they love the snow, love the hill, and they have to put on a good show. Otherwise, it'll be the last time that they get a chance to do that. So. Canadians have won there before. Manny Osborne, Parody, John Cachero coaches them. We've done well there, but not as of late. But those young guys, watch out this year.
Sully, 2 podiums there?
Yeah, my first ever podium. Actually, I was second there behind Jan Hudek, another Canadian. And then later in my career, I was tied for third with Klaus Kroll, my nemesis.
That's great.
Talk about the Americans going to Lake Louise. It's before Beaver Creek. Always, do they like that course? Is it a good warm-up course? What do the Americans think about that? And I'll go to Darren after that.
I mean, I feel like for the North Americans in general, we all raced NORAMs there. It was a very comfortable hill. And like Stem mentioned, it's not maybe the most challenging hill or whatever. So it was a good opening for the World Cup. And we always felt at home there because we were close to home and we'd had a lot of time on the hill from NORAM. So that was always my takeaway. That's
going to be one of the most devastating thing is all the NORAM races afterwards and those kids getting training that have safety, World Cup safety to standards for them there. And, to get 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 runs down that course is immeasurable. So that's going to be really tough on the younger NORAM kids.
Well, yeah, the race organizers up there at Lake Louise did a phenomenal job, like just extending that time on that race hill, for those younger skiers. Like Marco said, we had a lot of NORAM races up there, and it was a test. I mean, you're on like a World Cup prep hill, and I think really there should be more of that, like across the board, like just anytime a venue hosts a World Cup, there should be training afterwards, maybe some high level races, either Europa Cup or NORAM, just to kind of like develop our entire next generation of skiers around the world. For me, it was a good start up to the season. I had a 5th in downhill, a 3rd in Super G, were my 2 best results there. But I also had like really devastating races, and just by pushing too hard on wee waxy flats up there, trying to get away with like a really tight line and paying the price there. And it's a fairly easy section. but it's high speed. And if you push the line there, it's really costly. And I did have a chance to catch up with Travis Gadong out here in Copper, and he's like super excited. I mean, it's the first race of the year. You don't really know where anybody stands. You do see some like results from, you know, the Norwegians, Italians, the Germans, and Americans here in Copper from training days, but it is a little different. You have snow that's soft. You have snow that's like rock hard, icy. You know, just there's like really critical sections, but they're missing that big air stem. I mean, it's like I never had a chance to hit that big. What was it called? The sunrise jump?
Sunset, yeah.
Sunset. And I just feel like that's part of downhill, big jumps. And so that's one thing, like in my generation, that wasn't even in the picture. And I do have a picture of a poster on my wall of Thorburn, of that gnarly area you just showed us all. But that's something that I was always hoping to get a crack at, but never did.
Last 7 years, there have been 7 different winners: Meyer, Dressen, Franz, Voigt, Svindal, Jansrud. And I was looking up into their times, digging it. Meyer was 5th until halfway down, and then won it at the bottom. Dressen won it at the last section. Franz won it pretty much the whole way down. Voigt, he won it halfway. Svindal was 4th at the top, ended up winning. So it's one at the top, it's one in the middle, it's one on the bottom. Super interesting to me. AJ, what do you think is the most critical part of that course, and why?
Well, for sure that, you know, it's a gliding course. You got to have fast skis. You got to ski the gliding well. But, you know, there's, like Stem said, the rhythm of that course is really difficult to find. You know, you've got to be good letting the skis run straight. You've got to be good, you know, cranking it through fishnet turn. You got to be good over the jumps, and you know, the combos of the jumping where you're turning, you're jumping, you're landing, you're turning away. Now that's such a unique skill to downhill, and it's not in every course. But if you've got the ability to really carry that rhythm cleanly, then you can be really fast. You know, jumping back a little bit, I think that I completely agree with what you guys are saying about the value of a World Cup venue for developing speed. Darren, you and I are here at Copper right now watching, you know, the best in the world train down this mountain, and getting some, you know, younger generations the ability to train on a track, no matter whether it's, you know, not the toughest race in the world like Lake Louise is, or, you know, some other ones. You know, Beaver Creek's obviously very technical, but this one here at Copper is also, you know, not the most demanding, but it's good for speed. There's some big jumps, and so, you know, watching the World Cup guys train here, I think this is a good warm up for Lake Louise. Lake Louise resembles a lot of things that we see here in Copper, so it should be awful competitive up there next weekend. I'm really looking forward to it.
Just thinking about what AJ said, you know, Copper, the only real difference, or the big difference, what I always felt going from Copper to Lake Louise, was the snow surface. I mean, Lake Louise, they'd put a lot of water on that hill, and especially in the years where there's low snow, I mean, it could get rattly and icy and pretty gnarly. Even though the slope of the hill wasn't the most aggressive, it was still, in contrast to the really smooth Colorado snow of Copper, it was a definite wake-up call for that first World Cup race. So I always felt like getting it rolling on the top flats there, and wee waxy flat was a big one. And then you tried to maintain your speed over Coach's Corner through fishnet turn, and then coming on to waterfall and C turn. Those are the kind of next sections on the steep that you carry all your speed onto the flat. I know the years that I did well, I really nailed like the C turn section and carried everything out onto that long flat. You're in your tuck for about 25 seconds before the finish. And you have to nail that one to have any chance, I think.
Always like going off the steep pitch on the flat, like my biggest goal is to try and have the fastest speed. You know, I needed that,
Yeah.
right? That was like, how can I bring in the most heat on the flats? And just, you know, you need to have that speed to carry the rest of how far is that, like 35 seconds from there to the finish or something. But I mean, you were nuking. It's really high. I mean, high 80s. You guys recall what the speed is there?
Yeah,
it's in there.
146, 148, whatever
Yeah.
that translates
Yeah.
to. So yeah.
I covered that race for NBC probably, 12 years, a lot of Lindsey Vonn races and a bunch of the guys races. And it always seemed like you said, Darren, if you don't come off of, out of C turn and gun barrel with
Gun
good
barrel.
speed, it really, from a TV perspective, it's hard as a commentator to say, oh, the race is over, but in your mind, it is, you really can tell if you don't nail those turns, as much as you might have skied the top well, and if you don't nail those turns and carry a lot of speed onto the flats there, it's really, really tough to be fast at the
That's
end.
tricky too. You take a lot of heat off through gun barrel. Then that one right footer, you coming around the corner, it's blind. Especially in Super Gs, it seems like that gate is it's always hard to judge. You're trying to stay really low in that bully, good aerodynamics. You don't want to come up too tall, to lose time, or put extra drag on the clock. But that seemed to be kind of pretty tricky as well, like really having to have your line dialed.
Yeah, definitely. If you pinch it off or go too direct over some of those rollers down there, you land and you've got to hit the edge really hard, to recover the line, and that just dumps a ton of speed. So you have to be smart, especially if you carry a lot of speed out of gun barrel, because that makes it just, with all that speed, it's just extra important to be on a smart line that you can be really, really smooth and clean.
Hey, Doug Lewis here, and I want to talk about the American Downhiller Speed Camp. American Downhiller is the leader in teaching young ski racers how to go fast and have fun. 2023 will mark the 6th annual American Downhiller Speed Skills Camp in Mammoth Mountain. Our speed camp is coached exclusively by current and former World Cup racers and coaches who are passionate about helping the next generation of athletes achieve their dreams. We specifically focus on aerodynamics, jumping technique, speed tactics, and the mental training required to safely navigate Super G and downhill race courses. If you are a ski racer who wants to go fast, check out our website, AmericanDownhiller.com, for all specific camp dates. Describe the skill set of the perfect Lake Louise downhill champion.
For me, I think it's a bigger guy. I've always, when I stood there and watched, it just seems the bigger guys seem to win all the time. You can be a smaller guy and win in Super G, and that's fine. And you have to have great skills in Super G, obviously. But the bigger guy for me in downhill, Kriekmeyer, Dominic Paris, Kilday, the big strong guys who, like Manny Osborne, Paradis, won for Canada, Jan Hudets, as you said earlier. Those guys just seem to be able to carry their weight through those sections, even though if they're a little scratchy and scrub some turns, don't have a lot of speed coming out of them, they can usually pick it up on the flats. And that's where it's usually won for me, the top and the bottom.
For me, I think it's like Louise being the start of a new year. Every time it seems like there's a guy or two or three who just had a great summer, and they come into the training runs and you see them like they're just standing really well on their skis, they're confident. For last year, I had a chance to be up there watching the race, and Matthias Meyer would just, from the first training run, looked like so on fire, and he wasn't even that fast in the training runs, but then he came on race day and just smoked everyone. And it was just like somebody you could see, because he'd had a great summer and he was feeling strong. And I feel like Lake Louise is kind of, every year there's someone there who is just feeling it, whether that's their skill set or not,
Yeah, I think just going back to skill sets, like you have to have a really good feel for the snow. I mean, it's cold, it's dry, it's really aggressive. So a good touch, you can't over work it. You can't be too aggressive, but have that like just instinctual like feel for speed, good touch, good aerodynamics, strong. And I think it's, you got to take chances in the right places. It's fun this time of year because you're not quite sure who those guys are that Marco just mentioned that had a phenomenal like prep season, and they're just kind of rolling and until you're up there, until, the train runs start going down. So there's a number of guys that I'd say 10 guys that probably have a really good chance of winning.
I think the single hardest part about that course is fishnet through C-turn, fishnet fall away C-turn. And yeah, like Marco said, someone that's had a good prep period, that's feeling good on their skis, really solid and well-balanced, that can get in there and figure that little section out in training, has the best chance to win. For sure, size is important because it's a flat gliding type of a track, and it's a gravity sport. But man, you got to be standing well on your skis, and you got to figure that little puzzle out in training.
Yeah, I'll just end with the fact that, I mean, maybe this isn't the skill set, but a veteran, maybe you can prove me wrong, as a rookie won this thing, but a veteran, they come in there mentally confident, they know the course, and they know enough to tweak and not over ski it and not go too crazy, and feel their way down and figure out the puzzle, as AJ and Darren said, the puzzle of that course, depending on the year and the things. The veterans usually win. So now we'll get into a little bit of who will win. Let's think our top threes. Just a little bit of a backup. I think Bodie the only Americans won the downhill. Canadians we talked about. Austrians, they've won it 8 times, including last year with Meyer. The Norwegians, they've won it 4 times, Svindal and Jansrud. Swiss 4 times, Kusch, Foyts, and even a couple of Italians, Paris and Peter Phil. So this is a little bit of a setup. The top 10 or the top cup standings from last year was Kilde, Foyts, Paris, Odermatt, Meyer, Kriekmeyer, and then of course we got to throw in the Americans, RCS, Bennett, Ganong, and let's talk about the Canadians, James Crawford at least, and maybe Stemmle, you can help us out with some of those young Canadians or the veteran Canadians. But I've outlined it. My top 3 are going to be Foyts. He's going to win it again. He's going to steal it over Odermatt. So 2 Swiss, and I'm putting RCS on the podium. So you don't have to maybe give me your top 3, but let me hear what we're thinking.
Who's
All right, I'll
first?
start this off. Just before Stemmle can jump in there with his Canadians, I'm going to go with our American boys, with Steve Nyman coming out back with the win. Travis Ganong second, and Bryce Bennett third.
Wow. All right, Marco.
Uh,
Pushing all the
That's
chips to
what
the
happened.
middle of the table. All right, I'm up. All right, so sounds good. So, I'm here in Copper, and I'm on the track every day watching the guys go for fun. I'm watching the girls go because I'm working with a few of them. But I'm just geeking out up here, and I'm seeing a lot of skiing. I'm seeing some good and I'm seeing some bad. Odermatt is skiing really well, and it's fun to watch him. I think the jury's out a little bit on whether he can win it, but he seems to be skiing very, very well. Nils Hinterman is also looking good. He's got some good times. I know he had some good races in the spring last year. I agree with RCS. So I've got RCS in the top 3. Man, to sprinkle it in there, I think Kriekmeyer has impressed me a little bit here this week as well. And he's always knocking on the door at Lake Louise.
I think Kriekmeyer too. I'd say Kriekmeyer, Paris, Foyts. Foyts just always seems to be in there. But yeah, don't count out the Canadians. Cam Alexander won the last race of the year in Kvitfjell in Norway. Whistler kid, bigger guy. Was out with a knee injury the last couple of years. Broderick Thompson, he really got the things rolling last year in Beaver Creek when he's second in the Super G and made the rest of the Canadians go, hey, you know what? I trained with this guy. I kick his ass all the time. Why can't I be there? And then sure enough, Jack Crawford wins the bronze at the Olympics. So Jack's maybe not the greatest hill for him, but this guy's so hard and so competitive on himself, you never know. And then Brody Seeger, he's got a bit of a chance too. He's one of the better technical skiers in the bunch. So, but the other 3 guys for sure. And RCS, I really like RCS. I want to see how he skis this year, how he comes back from injuries as well after having last year a good season under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go against all those predictions, and I'm so stoked to see the Canadians step it up. Cameron Alexander, like winning Kvitfjell, that was awesome. You know, like you say, he's big, he's strong, and yeah, he's gonna be in there. I think you have the extra kind of like home crowd, you know, energy, and there is demanding, like you said, for any like you know, home team. But like hopefully you use that energy to keep rolling. But you know, it's just my former ski tech Tomas Bergler, he's got Kilde, and he's got some rocket ships. Kilde's been skiing really fast here in Copper, so I'm gonna go with him, and then Paris and Foyts for on the podium as well. For an American, RCS is skiing fast, but if Kyle Nagamir can put together, he has a great chance. He's super strong. He's been doing well. He actually won a training run up against Kildale, the Norwegians and everything. But he did have a crash the other day, and I'm not sure how he hasn't been on snow the last couple of days. So that's kind of like just up in the air where he's at right now. But, just he's got speed. And I will have to give, like Marco was saying, I think the big nod to Travis Ganong. He's been on the podium. He's had a 4th and 5th. He's really stoked on his new ski tech who was working with RCS when he won Bormio. And he's saying that he has the best feeling on skis right now that he's had like his whole career, just with the touch, especially in kind of this like cold winter snow. So, look out for Ganong as well.
So before we sign off, any last reflections, thoughts, memories about the Lake Louise World Cups?
Ice skating on, behind the chateau. I've been there one year where it was just like a sheet of glass, not a speck of snow on the lake, and you could skate from one end to the next. It was incredible. Like, just like, everybody out there, like, you got to stick a puck, but just to be able to skate and be in that, like, that area, it's the most beautiful place, like, of like all the stops, the mountains around, and to be able to just like put on hockey skates and skate for like 2 miles and just on the most like smooth ice you've ever been on. It was awesome. And then you come back and there's fires and all kinds of stuff happening. People are hanging on the back of the chateau, and it's a good winter environment, man. It's beautiful up there. Yeah, it's really chill and relaxed.
And Lake Louise, I was there as well, Darren, when the lake had frozen over, and first time it happened in 45 years or something, and frozen with no snow. You can see the bottom, and you take a slap shot, and you have to skate to the other end of Lake Louise to get it. So yeah, that's pretty special place, and always good fun to be at home for sure.
I think for the Europeans, they love it because they're not like, there's no hype around them. They're not getting attacked by all these like, fans and media. And I think it's really relaxing. Actually, Dominic Paris, talking to him today, he said that's one of the highlights for him is Lake Louise. It's just, a great, chance to get things rolling on the downhill circuit. But, it's just how relaxed and beautiful it is up there. He just soaks it up. So he's already got that in his head, and that actually goes a long ways. And he's going to have that. That's why I put him on the podium, because I think he's got some good feelings, moving into Lake Louise here.
Yeah, I was going to say it's also the only, I think the only race of the year where all the racers are staying in the same hotel, the chateau, big buffet, meals for every meal. So it's a bit of a reunion, and we're back for another year. The camaraderie's good. And yeah, the Americans are lucky. Sometimes you get a turkey in the room next door on Thanksgiving. That doesn't always happen, but yeah, chill vibes, like Darren said, and just a good fun place to kick it off. Absolutely.
Thanks for watching and listening to our American Downhill podcast. Next week, our special guest will be the GOAT, Lindsey Vonn, and we will get her thoughts on a course she won 18 times. For AJ, Darren, Marco, and our crazy Canuck, Brian Stemmle, thanks for listening. A special thanks to our sponsors, skiracing.com, ADLskiclub.com, American Downhillers Camps and Clinics, and Elite Team Fitness Camps. If you'd like to sponsor these podcasts, contact Doug Lewis at info@americandownhiller.com. Ski fast.